Welcome to the Rural Dispatch, the podcast delivering stories from rural America. I'm your host, Allie Behrens. Headquartered in rural Iowa, I help run a nationwide livestock transportation company, and I'm here to bring you stories from the people who help shape this industry and our rural communities. Whether you're a trucker, livestock producer, or rural entrepreneur, this show is for you. Each week, we explore the realities of rural business life, from the highways to the fields and everything in between. So buckle up and let's dive into today's episode. Today's guest is someone who knows how to work a crowd, move cattle, and keep an auction ring buzzing. I'm talking about Will Epperly, the 2022 World Livestock Auctioneer Champion and co-owner of Dunlap Livestock Auction in Dunlap, Iowa. Welcome, Will. Let's dive into the livestock auction. How long have you been a co-owner?
Yep, own a piece of Dunlap Livestock with Jim and John Shaben down there in Dunlap, Iowa. It was a pretty big honor here about 2 years ago. They offered me the position to buy into the market. Jay wanted to step away, so they made the decision to give me the opportunity and a chance to be a part of the Dunlap Livestock, which I've worked there for, been in Iowa now for 12 years, which has been my longest span with staying in one spot. So it's been a real pleasure to be at Dunlap.
So how did you get hooked up with those guys? I mean, did you know them previously or?
My father and Jim Jr. were back in the 90s. The Livestock Marketing Association was going through a little bit of a restructuring at that time. So they had to rebuild LMA pretty much from the ground up. And my father, Albert Epperly, Jim Jr., and Pat Goggins, some of the greats in the livestock industry, kind of took LMA, rebuilt it back up into the fabulous association that it is today. So my father and Jim, I've known them for years. I went with my dad to all these auctioneering contests. The year that John won it, I was just a little sprat at that time. In 2003, when he won it in Lexington, Kentucky, I was there. My dad was actually one of the judges. I think he was an interview judge that year. And he's been judges in the past, and I was always fascinated with the contest. Well, in 2010, I was lucky enough to qualify for my first semifinals, make it to the big dance at 19, 20 years old. And it was a very humbling experience because I was getting to sell right alongside with my heroes and greats of the time. And it was really cool. But in 2010, John watched me down there in Oklahoma City, and he came back, told Jim and Jay, he says, "Hey, y'all know this Epperly kid?" And Jim kind of popped off to him. He goes, "Oh, yeah, that's Albert Epperly's boy." And he goes, "We might want to start watching him." Well, in 2013, I was living in Kentucky at the time, working for the Bluegrass Stockyards, working 7 of those barns, 7 days a week, 20 hours. It was many hours and long times. I wasn't selling much. I was pretty much very useful in the back, from pin back, sorting, loading out. But John called me in May and said, "Hey, would you come out here and interview for a job at Dunlap?" I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, when one of the most respected barns in the country calls you with that opportunity, of course you jump at it." So I came out here in June of 2013. I'd already qualified for the Worlds, and it was right before the World Championships. Went down to Montgomery, Alabama. John I pick at John these days about it because John avoided me like the plague down there in Alabama. Wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't say boo to a ghost. He said hi to me and kind of walked past. And I still razz him about it today, didn't know who I was. And then on my birthday in July, John calls me at 5 o'clock at night. I get back from work. I'm really tired, and I see John Shaben pop up on my phone. I said, "Well, this could be interesting. I could get it, or, I'm just going to stay here and be miserable in Kentucky." But I look back at the opportunity I had at Bluegrass, and it was a great opportunity, great people to work for. It was long hours, but I liked it. But John called me and he says, "Hey, we'd really like you to come to Dunlap. We think you'd be a great fit out here." So I jumped at the opportunity. August 10th, I moved out here in 2013 and been here ever since. So they kind of watched me from 2010 to 2013, but I really think that I got hired on the admiration of my father that Jim and John had about my dad, because I will say my dad has been one of my greatest heroes in my time, from him owning a livestock auction back when I was a little kid to now to where I am. I never think my father thought I'd get to this goal. He always knew I had the drive, but he never figured I'd get this goal at this young of age. I mean, people look at me now, I'm 36 years old, but I'm kind of still young in most people's eyes.
Right, yeah. So you grew up in the barn, basically.
Mm-hmm.
When did you know that this was what you wanted to do with your life?
I guess really when I knew that I wanted to be it. My dad was an auctioneer, and my grandfather's gone. His name was Frank Epperly. My dad and him built the barn from the ground up in Virginia. I remember being 7 years old, and I was always fascinated with it. I always listened to Ralph Wade, the 1974 world champion, all the time. My brother still today cannot listen to Superior and listen to Ralph and not be thinking about going to sleep, because I would listen to Ralph when I went to bed every night, and I would play it pretty loud in my room. But when I was 7, I looked at my grandfather and I said, I want to sell baby calves. And my granddaddy grabbed me, put me on my knees, and it was pretty much thrown to the fire, was sell them. No practice, no nothing. I sat up there and I sold baby calves, and it kind of became a routine. And I told my dad at 10, 11 years old, I really think this is the profession I want to be in, is I want to run a livestock auction. Well, at 14, my heart got broken. My grandfather and my father decided they were done with the auction business and decided to sell the barn. So then I became kind of a cowboy. My dad decided we were going to run purebred Angus cows, and we got up to about 700 mama cows back in Virginia. So me and my brother, all the way through middle school, high school, even a little bit of college, we went back and worked for Dad. We was horseback in the mountains, running cows, weaning calves, calving, baling hay. I mean, it was all the things that cowboying was doing back there. And it's a little different. You come back out here and how big of an operation is from either a backgrounding operation to a finishing operation. It's a whole lot different in Virginia. It's pretty much a cow-calf operation. None of those guys really experience the fattening part of the operation, because 99.9% of those calves to 95% of those calves are going to end up out here in the Midwest, whether it be Texas, Oklahoma, or here in Iowa. Those Virginia calves are going to end out here to be finished. So it was kind of interesting to me to move out here. But yeah, that's where we are. My dad still runs about 300 purebred Angus cows. My brother, he lives in Wamego, Kansas, and works for Next Gen Cattle Company. He's the ranch manager and the CEO of sales and genetics down there. And actually, they're ramping up for their sale here in 2 weeks, and there's 400 bulls there. And I'm a consultant on that one, so I'm a man of many hats. I don't just own a sale barn. I kind of go around and do a lot of things.
What's the biggest accomplishment in your career so far?
It probably is being the 2022 world champion. I told my grandfather at 9, 10 years old that I'm going to be like Ralph Wade. I'm going to be a world champion. And that was a goal I set for myself at a very young age that I wanted to accomplish. And 12 years it took of dedication, of working on my chant, of working on interview process, because not only it is an auction contest, but you represent the LMA, Livestock Marketing Association, for a year. You're their poster child. So I had a lot of things to cover and to become to do that. And it was one of the most surreal moments. I look back at that contest, and the contest before, I was always, I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this. I finally told my dad, I looked at him, I told my wife, my dad, and my mom, I said, you know what? The cards are going to fall where they're going to fall. I'm going to do what I think's best, and we're going to see what happens. So I kind of threw caution to the wind and just went for it. I did my very best in the interview process, and in the auction, I kind of just let it go and let it be what it was. And Dad says that was the best run I ever seen you had. But me being who I am, I walked into the banquet that night, and I had thought Justin Dotson from Welch, Oklahoma had won. I thought Eric Dries out of Idaho had a very good chance to win. Buddy of mine who I razz all the time is Jacob Massey from Petersburg, Tennessee. And I really thought he had a good chance. They all really sold very well that day. They had a great interview, and everybody's like, Will, I'm pretty sure you're going to be the champion. And I'd always, growing up in this, I'd always known that LMA is putting the cameras in certain places. And I told Kristen Parman at LMA this the night of the contest. I said, well, I'm not your world champion. I know that, because I said I'm sitting right next to the camera. I said there's no way that I'm it, because the camera's got to get to the champion very, very quickly. And God bless Kristen. She never led on to it. She never hinted at it or nothing. And I sat there, and runner-up champion was Jacob Massey. I said, that's a good pick 3, and good for him. And Justin Dotson as reserve champion. I said, well, that's pretty good. I said, well, I guess my buddy Sisto Paez over there finally got it rocking after 2 years. I said, he's your world champion. And a good friend of mine was a champion, Chuck Bradley from down in Alabama, if you talk to Chucky. But he kind of paused, and he looked up, and I said, ain't no way that my chant's about to come across these speakers. Well, sure enough, my chant plays across, and he says, Will Epperly, Dunlap, Iowa. And it was It was a moment you really dream of that you never think is going to come true, is getting to hear that moment that you achieved that goal. But that is probably the biggest goal other than becoming a father in this lifetime that has really stuck with me in my career of being an auctioneer, is being honored with that title. Now, it's been 3 years since I've won it. Now I'm just a has-been, but
washed up.
Yeah, washed up. Nobody wants him anymore. He's old. But I look at the contest now and see all these young guys really coming into it and really catching on, and the rookies that we've got. I'm so glad to be out of this contest. It's not even funny. The talent that we have coming up is amazing, because that's what's going to take in our industry, for our industry of competitive marketing to continue, is going to take that young generation. And right now that's in pretty good hands, because we got pretty good young guys coming up here, and they're learning from the veterans that are still into it. And just like I did, you learn from the veterans. And most of them, when I came along, they all looked at me and said, dang it, now we got to beat this Epperly kid. And now I look back at it, when I was into 9 years, and a young guy would come out, now I got to beat this young buck. Where'd he come from? And never heard of him. And it's just the opportunity that young auctioneers need to get, is just that one foot in the door. And it is, I guess I was lucky enough, I grew up into it, so I had an unfair advantage. But these young guys, you got Elliot, it's over here doing a hay sale in Otabote, and that young man has got a heck of a chant to him. He just needs the opportunity to sit down in a barn. There's a young man up in northern Iowa, around Lamar's area. His name's David. He sells sometimes at Yankton, South Dakota. He just needs a shot, a bigger stage. There's so many good young guys coming up and around that I've always wanted to take one of them into my barn and take them under my wing. And then if they leave me, wonderful, great, and they bloom and fly, or go run their own market, or go work for a bigger market than mine, I'd be more than happy to do that with them. But there's so many young guys that have such good talent around that I feel a little bit bad that I want them to see them succeed.
Yeah, right. Would you say that most guys are self-taught?
I guess as myself, I was self-taught. I sat there, and I'm pretty sure LMA, if they'd went back 30, 20 years ago, I'd have been their most frequent flyer on their website, because I listened to all the world champions. I picked up on things that they do, but a lot of guys are self-taught. You can go to class and they can break down how to build your chant, but you still have to build your chant that it's you. That
you make it yours.
Exactly. Yeah. When you're selling, they want to hear you. They want to say, oh, he sounds like Ralph Wade. Oh, he sounds like Trent Stewart. Oh, he sounds like Charlie Cummings. He sounds like Ty Thompson. You've got to create something that makes you stand out. And I think these young guys are figuring that out. Build something, take too much. Now, I will say some of these young guys, and I find myself doing it, is everybody looks to me and go, oh boy, he uses a lot of filler words. Yeah, I do. But I'm not saying that's necessarily correct. I know guys that are way better than me that use one phrase and one phrase only, and they're way better than I am as clarity and rhythm and timing. The young generation needs to understand, start with the basis. Find something you like, try it. If it rolls off your tongue, good, great. If it doesn't, scrap it and go to the next one. Build something that is clarified to you, that is marking you, and that you feel comfortable with. Too many of these guys get into, I need to sound like this guy, this guy, this guy. You don't need to do that. You need to sound like yourself. You need to be yourself and create something that you are comfortable with in your transitions, clarity, timing, where you're not getting yourself mixed up. And I think a lot of these young guys are starting to figure that out, that it is very important to be what you're comfortable with, to stay in this box. You can try some new things. It's okay. But if it doesn't work, scrap it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a lot of these young auctioneers are learning to be self-taught. They do take things from, I guess I can say I'm the old generation of the auction deal, but they do take things like, well, how do you do your quarters? How do you do your has? How do you teach your tongue to pop the way you've got it popping? And how do you get your clarity? And those things, you can help them with little details and little quirks, but most of them have to figure out their own chant themselves, because I can't take myself, put them in their body, teach them what I know, and then leave their body. It just doesn't work that way. But a lot of these guys are self-taught these days.
Let's talk about your time with LMA. You kind of went all over that year with LMA. Where's your favorite place to be?
That's a tough one. I went to so many places that year. I made 32 appearances in 20 different states. I went back home to Wytheville, Virginia, sold there. It was kind of going back home to singles and little groups that did sell a load of heifers. And I was like, this is kind of weird. Never saw a load of heifers when I lived here. And I would say probably my favorite stop was Billings, Montana. But there's a lot of reasons to why it was my favorite. One of the main reasons was two of my heroes in this industry, which is Joe Goggins and Ty Thompson, two guys that may never know, but learned so much from them. I got to share the block and got to work with them at the Northern Video Sale there that summer. And I thought that was really, really cool. Probably my second favorite stop, and it was a video auction again, was Superior Livestock selling the Week in the Rockies in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I got to spend 2 days there. I got to hang out with Ralph Wade. I got to hang out with my main hero. I got to hang out with Charlie Cummings. I got to talk with people across the industry that feed a heck of a lot more cattle than I'll probably ever see in my lifetime. Getting to talk with them, how they do their business. I'm sure they didn't let all their secrets go, but being able to ask those questions to better myself was one of the coolest experiences. And I got to do that at Billings as well, was ask those questions. I guess my favorite part of Billings was I got to ride around with Joe Goggins for a half a day. We went and saw the ranch, went through bull calves that he was going to sell the following year. And how cool was that to get to go to one of the most pristine ranches in the country? And Joe asked me, well, what's the best bull in here? What's your favorite herd sire group? And I'm sitting there going, I'm just a peon in this Angus industry. And this is a legend asking me. And that was the cool part, that he was asking for my honest opinion. And I found a bull calf that I really liked. He was a bomber son. And I said, in my opinion, Joe, I said, there's your top seller right now. If he develops the way he's developing now as a calf. And he goes, and you've got the same eye. I was like,
what a compliment.
I said, are you just saying that to make me feel good? Or am I actually right? He goes, no, you're 100% right. He's been one of my favorites since he's hit the ground. I said, well, I guess maybe I do have the eye when one of the legends tell you that. But I did get to go to Washington. I don't like big cities. If I can visit them for a day, fine, great, wonderful.
That's enough.
But I'm sure you're the same way as I am. If you take a vacation, it's Black Hills, it's some little small town America.
Yep.
But I did get to go there. It was very knowledgeable to see. We got to go there. We got to talk with congressmen, congresswomen, senators, and got to tell our story. And I think that is one of the most important things in our industry that I think we're not doing enough today. But all of us in the cattle industry are more humbled and saying, I'm going to focus on mine. And I think we need to be more vocal of how proud we are to be cattle raisers, cattle feeders, cow-calf operation, and tell our story. And I think that's a wonderful thing that you're doing here, Allie, is you're helping telling the rural story of America. We've got to be our voice, and this is a great platform to do that, is to tell our story, how much we care. I mean, here just in the last month, we've had 2 major blizzards that we ain't seen here in a while. And a lot of those guys are telling me, how many hours they didn't get to sleep because they were out there protecting their herd. I know 4 guys that got frostbite that probably lose their fingers because they were out there taking care of their cattle. And how many people in the city know our struggle?
Right. If we don't talk about it, they have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. I know when it was blizzard, they're all bundled up sitting in their houses or their apartments, not thinking, there's a cow calving. I got to get to her. I got to get her warm. I got to get her here. I've got to do this. I think it's one of the most important things is to take time, because all of us in the cattle business, like I said, aren't big about bragging about ourselves.
Right. Nobody wants really to be in the spotlight or to feel like they're bragging, but it is an important piece just to educate the public. We've all seen how far people have come from knowing where their food comes from. I mean, everyone used to be raised on a farm, and that is just not the case anymore.
And where I grew up in Virginia, most of them kids, they'd see a cow in the pasture and they say, all you got to do is feed it grass. You got to feed it a lot more than that, and you've got to vaccinate it. You've got to do this, this, and this. And they were all amazed. And I would drive to school with a truck and trailer and horses and dogs, and all them kids are like, what are you doing? I said, well, as soon as school's over, I said, I got to go check cows. And I said, these are my tools to go check cows. Well, we're all going to the lake. Good for you. I got cows to check. I got cows calving. I said, I ain't got a choice. I said, if I got a heifer out there that's got a calf coming backwards or needs help becoming a mother, I got to be there. And my mother tells me to this day that I care too much. But when I was calving heifers for Dad or anybody, I'd lose a calf. And let me tell you something, I beat myself up one wall and down the other. What could I have done? Could I got there quicker? Should I made the decision to pull quicker? Should I made the decision to call a vet quicker? Just a lot of things would have went through my head and blame myself. And my mom's like, you got to let that go. It was probably out of your hands.
Right.
And I said, but what if it wasn't?
Right.
And it cost me a lot of relationships in my younger years because I would sit there and be out on a date and they're like, what are you thinking about? And I'm like, how I could have saved that calf? You know, it was just what I thought about. I wrestled, but it was wrestling or cattle. That was the two things I was really good at.
I think that's a common thing in the livestock industry is, you know, you might see these big, tough guys, but they're not big and tough when it comes to their livestock. They show more emotion probably with their livestock than they do with their wife and kids at home. I mean, there's a lot of guys that take that really personally. And I do think that's probably part of the mental health crisis in the ag industry, too. A lot of these guys are isolated, too. You know, we're all in rural communities, and it's not something that you necessarily want to talk about with your buddies either, because I don't know if men
you're a wuss, you're this, you're that, oh, suck it up, buttercup. I've had, you know, then it becomes of who had the worst train wreck in a calving season.
Right.
But yeah, I do believe that a lot of these guys, my brother being one of them, me being one, dad being one, we just take it personally because we know we are the caregivers of these animals. And I'll tell anybody this that doesn't believe it, that believes we're the enemy. You ain't going to find somebody that's going to go 24/7, 365 days a year on these cattle, or any livestock they raise. I mean, they take care. You can't just say, here you are.
Right.
I mean, they'll find the worst place to be or sinkhole or something to fall in. But we care so much about the animal's welfare that we will put, and I'm one that'll say it, is I will put my well-being, making sure this animal's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can tell horror stories of calving cows, and she doesn't know I'm there to help the calf. I can't blame her. She's doing what God intended her to do, when that was to protect a calf.
Mm-hmm. And
I've got broken bones, broken ribs and everything, and I'm sure everybody else that's calved out cows has got it too. But I had a calf in the mud, and I had to get the calf out or it's gone. And she stomped me into the mud, left, right, and center. I still got the calf out, but I took a whooping doing it. And the calf got out, we got it warmed up, and got it back to its mother. And that's the most pride that I take into raising cattle, is I saved the calf.
Mm-hmm.
That you can find no better glory than that at the moment. I guess it's the best thing that I heard from Yellowstone was it's art without an audience. And it truly is. It truly is art without nobody seeing it. You know, a lot of them cowboys you talk to down in Oklahoma and Texas, they tell you stories of back in the back pastures, the best loop they ever thrown, the best cut they ever made on a cow, the glorious moment of saving a calf that was in a rigorous by themselves. They had nobody around to applaud them. And that's what's in our industry today that I think's a bad thing, is there's nobody applauding us. It's always throwing daggers at us.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to put the positive of what we do, of how we put, one, our bodies on the line, of our physical being on the line, but how much our emotional and mental ability is fried, because it really is. Your mind's going to race going home of what could you have done better. What you never really get that relief. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the mental toll that it really takes on a lot of farmers and ranchers these days. And like you said, isolating. You're by yourself.
Absolutely. So auctioneering, obviously, you have to have an extensive knowledge behind it too. It's not just the skill of what's coming out of your mouth. How has your background played into that too, to make you successful in this career?
You know, it has been a lot of things that I've learned from a young age, of quality of cattle, of grading cattle. Where I grew up in Virginia, a lot of them cattle are graded 2s, 3s, S's, MLs, and watching graders as I growed up and learning from them and being able to grade those cattle myself. Also, with my background of Angus, I've seen some of the best Angus ranches in the country and gotten to see how they do their operation, how they're developing stuff, what their breeding is. It has really helped me in knowledgeability of helping a customer pick out a bull for what they're wanting to do their operation. You know, I asked somebody the other day, what do you feel like your calves are lacking when they come to town? Most guys are going to tell you pounds. And I said, well, do you sell them off the cow? Do you sell them as backgrounded cattle, or do you take them to yearlings and sell them as yearling cattle? He goes, well, I sell them right off the cow. Well, this bull, when you look at his numbers and pedigree, if you look at his numbers here, he's really big at weaning and really big at yearlings. So he's going to come easy, but he's going to grow. And I think that's a bull that you kind of need to look for in your operation. So not only being able to grow up in a sale barn and knowledgeability of cattle themselves and seeing what cattle feed the best, what cattle feed okay, getting to grow up and feeding cattle myself of rations and everything and different things along those lines, I think has really benefited me. I have learned a heck of a lot more out here than I ever thought I would, learning from John and Jim and Jay about markets, the board. Those guys trade on the board. I never traded on the board until I moved out here, and learning that knowledgeability of hedges, puts, and things along those lines, watching the market trends, trying to best tell a producer from the market trend we're trending up here. I think we need to start thinking about moving them, because everybody in this industry is like, oh, there's still more there. Take the cash and run, man.
Yeah.
But I do believe that growing up, raising cattle, growing up in a sale barn, surely did help my chances of running an auction someday. And what I've learned here about running an auction, about the efficiency of this auction needs to run, pre-sorting, from knowing the market, knowing the value, reading people. That's a big thing, is reading people, is reading of who's interested in the cattle. I mean, a lot of people ask me, well, how do you know a guy's going to bid? His body will tell you. You know, a lot of them guys, they'll lean a little forward, they'll get relaxed. There's always these little tells that you can find about people when they're getting ready to bid. And it's just being able to read those people. But I think growing up mostly in this business, growing up around cattle in general, gave me more of my knowledge that I needed to knowing good cattle, plainer cattle that weren't going to work, and sure did help me a lot.
Have you ever been surprised at how high it just keeps going?
Every day. Every day. I mean, today I had a buddy of mine that's down in Missouri. He sent me a thing of calves that come right off the cow weighing 652, bring 310 off the cow. Everybody was like, here comes the end on Thursday and Friday. And I'm like, it's just a correction, guys. And heck, Friday, let's take Dunlap, for example. I had 5 to 6 guys bidding on every category, every weight, from steers to heifers. There was quite a few buyers at all weights. So does it take a lot of money to run this thing? Yes, it does boggle the mind of what this is. But what I feel, and I feel so extremely passionate about, is the auction way is a way to do business. Competitive marketing is the way to get the most for your calves. But I am just so excited for these cow-calf producers finally, after years being told they raise the greatest product in the world, which they do, finally getting the recognition and the reward for it. That's the coolest part of this thing being so high. Yeah, it's astronomical, but finally, these cow-calf guys are getting recognized for the years of sacrifice, the years of pain, the years of breaking even or losing money, and getting this big reward that they should give for what we produce here in the USA. No matter where you go in the world, everybody will tell you the best protein product, whether it be chicken, hogs, or beef, is raised here. And that's what absolutely boggles my mind, is that we aren't allowed to be proud of it. But finally, we're getting the recognition of these higher prices to say, now we are proud of it.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see it going in the next year, but 5-10 years too? Is it going to just keep trending? I mean, we've seen big jumps. You know, if we correct now,
it hurts.
Yeah.
This hurts. I do see it trending up a little bit more. I think we're kind of getting to the peak. You know, you listen to the experts and everything. They say we're going to see 235 fats, which back in the eastern part of the country, we have seen. Keith Lambright at Shipshewana, Indiana, was always making fun of me. I made a TikTok saying that I had two and a quarter fats, $2.25 fats. And he goes, heck, you're just playing. I sold 1,600 pound steers for $225, $226. I said, I guess I am playing. But it trends different around. It's more in that area to buy cattle in the eastern part. If you get good fat representation like you do in Indiana and Illinois and those areas, they're smaller operators. They're not bigger operators. They're going to finish out 20, 30 head, not a pot load or 2 pot loads or 3. So they're fed so much harder and longer, which these guys feed them out here harder and longer too, but they're in small packages. So they've kind of got to fight for them back there, those guys on the East Coast. It's one of the things that I would love to see here is you see it on the East Coast is those competitive markets. We need to see competitive market out here in fat cattle. But I understand they got the opportunity to sell 500 head and make money. Hey, no argument for me. I'm guilty of it too. If I got a chance to profit $125 a head, I'm going to take my profit and move on. But I do see it trending up. We are at the lowest number in our cow herd in history. The 1950s, we have blown them out of the water. We have watched it trend down the last 4 years. I know USDA doesn't recognize it, but I do. We're down 1% every year, and then this year it's down 2%. You take that up, the beef production is down 6%, and that's big numbers. It's not only from weather factors of droughts, of cutting back the herd because you don't have enough numbers. It falls to you and I's generation. How many of them are itching to come back to being a cow-calf operation, to being a backgrounding operation, to being a finishing operation? There's not a lot of us. Everybody's kind of looking at grain farming. They want to go back and run the farm. They want to run the grain farm. No problem in that. We need that to raise the cattle and feed the cattle. But that is more appealing on a work
getting run over by a cow.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot more appealing than getting hooked on and run over and kicked and stomped on like you're going to get. It's a lot less abusive. So it has more appealing factor to it than cattle. But I still believe that you get out west, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, even parts of Colorado, even how crazy that is right now, it's cowboy country. Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota. You know, you get on the east side of Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota, it's kind of going the farming way, but they're kind of figuring out that ground's not made for farming.
Right.
Here in Iowa, we have black dirt. We have good dirt here. It's kind of the ideal for farmland. So you can kind of see the cattle numbers dwindle away here. But the farther you go west, that's ranch country. And that's meant for the cow. And I do believe that. And I do think here in 27, and we've seen a little bit of it this year, but we haven't seen enough, because we haven't seen a heifer retention. Hardly any. You've seen a little bit start out in the west, but when these heifer calves are worth what they are, I wouldn't want to keep one at home either. I had a few heifers of my own at the house, and I looked at my wife and I said, we just might keep our heifer calves back. And she goes, well, that's 4 steers you're going to sell for an income on your herd. I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to sell the heifer calves. And she goes, I think you are too. And luckily enough for me, somebody bought them to breed them. So I feel a little bit better about that because, again, I got sentimental to my cows. Mm-hmm. I love my cows. But we've seen it around here, and you've seen these record prices around, even at Dunlap, at all these sale barns around. If you've got a heifer that is good enough, that is big-bodied, stout and good, that somebody wants to breed, we've seen them come back. Over in Dunlap, we've sold them from $22.50 to $25.25. West Point, they had about 500 over them 2 weeks ago. One guy had 178 in the cut, and the guy bought them at $25.75 and out the door. He bought them all as replacements. They're going to see an AI program. But again, the other thing you're seeing, and I don't know if you've seen it this weekend, but I saw down in Sam Saba, Texas, a set of Hereford pairs bring $6,000. I seen down in Butler, Missouri, a set of Red Angus pairs bring $5,800. And in Dunlap, we've seen pairs at $45.25, $45.50. And everybody's going to say, well, Will, you're just playing if Butler, Missouri and San Saba, Texas is beating you on that. This thing, when it comes to grass, I think it's going to go wild for a pair because we don't have the replacements. But what's wilder to me is when you sell a bred heifer that's due in 2 weeks and she brings $200 less than a cow that's got 100% calf on the ground. And she brings $42.75, and I'm sitting here going, that calf's still in the belly. This calf's live.
There's no guarantee.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gambling there.
This calf's on the ground. Yeah, I still got to keep it alive. There ain't no guarantee here he's going to make it to weaning, but I've got a lot more chance with him on the ground than I do with him in the belly. But again, that is the testament to what our herd is. It is so low. And we've got guys coming out of, well, heck, a potload of heifers went back to that were the bred heifers. They went to Illinois. We've got guys coming out of South Dakota down here trying to find cattle because nobody will let them go in South Dakota, but they've got to replenish their numbers, so they're coming in our area. We've got Missouri coming up here grabbing cattle. We've got Kansas coming up here and grabbing cattle, which that's very positive to me and very positive on the outlook of our industry. But it still falls to you and I's generation to step up and run with the ball because it can't last forever. Somebody's got to be here ready to take the opportunity and go forward.
Yeah. And I think for those that want to work, and we say all the time, if you're not taking a risk, there's not going to be a reward. I mean, there is a huge barrier to entry buying livestock with the prices they're at today. But I mean, if you can make it work, you're going to be one of the few that's left. And it's kind of like, I think back my grandparents, buying land back when they did. Now they're sitting on millions and millions of dollars that it wasn't worth that when they started, but also they made it through the 80s and they took a lot of risks to
Yeah,
make it work.
Everybody complains about 8, 9%. They were dealing with 22% interest.
Yeah.
That was a bigger risk of buying it in the 80s during the crash. And my in-laws, they farm a lot of ground. They raised hogs back and sold hogs right before the crash of the hogs and made a ton of money at that time. And they invested it back in land, which was a smart move at that time. If you had the ability to do it where you didn't have to ask the bank to have 22% on your land. So I think there's a big reward in this. I know it's a big risk. There ain't no guarantee with cattle. And just like crops and anything, Mother Nature can be your worst enemy at any time raising cattle and any time with corn and soybeans. But I think there's so much reward if you've got the nerve to step into it. I think it is a joyous time. I mean, when you sell cattle as high as we're selling them right now, and you walk out of there, I had a guy the other day, he had 30 head of steers he walked in with, red Angus steers. He texted me, he goes, how many times can you come in with 30 head and leave with 70 grand? It's a very rare thing. I mean, I had 13 head. I mean, I'm a small guy. Everybody's like, oh, well, you should have 100 head. If I had the time, I would. But my little 13 head of cows, my 13 calves bring back, and this was in October when we hadn't seen the extremes, but bring 22 grand home on 13 head. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good opportunity. And I think if a young person has the salt to want to do it or want to start, talk to some of the older generation, because maybe they don't have somebody to pass it on to and give this knowledge to. I know if somebody asks your husband for advice, Smoke could give it to him without any hesitation.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, but that's just how big-hearted Smoke is. He wants to see it flourish.
Well, and I don't think any of these older guys want this way of life to go away. They're more than willing to share what they know. And, you know, how do you get started? And it really comes down to you have to go out and talk to people. I mean, you have to build those relationships and let your neighbor know that you're interested in doing that. They're not going to know otherwise. There's a lot of guys that their kids are not interested in it. And, you know, whether it be that they just never came back or there wasn't room for them when they, you know, left school in the first place and they found a different path and they're on that now and they're not coming back. I mean, there comes a time everybody's got to get out of the business at some point. And I think a lot of guys would rather see it continue and pass their herd on to someone that they know and who is going to take care of it and was taught by them than, no offense, but take it to the sale barn and not have any idea where they end up. I mean, they walk away with a fat check, but...
Yeah, and that is the thing. And I had to sell some cows and they went to my neighbor, but I got to sell, and everybody's going to say, well, you own a sale barn. Why do you take them to sale barn? I was a little bit sentimental about them cows. I wanted to see them go to my neighbor where I could still keep an eye on them. Right. I'm the same way. My brother tells me this. My wife tells me this. She goes, you get too attached to them cattle. And I said, yes, I do. I said, I take a lot of pride into them. And I said, because they're mine and I should. But a lot of these old guys, older generation, they want to pass it on to somebody. But just like you said, sometimes the kids, I mean, I don't know if my boys are going to want to be in this. It's a lot of work. And if they have another passion, God bless them, and I hope they exceed at that. It is going to break my heart if they ain't going to want to come work cows with their dad, but that's okay. That's fine. That's their ambition. But I just hope that I can give my boys what my dad gave me, and it was a gift. When I grew up, everybody said, you work too hard, and you work too long. I am so thankful that my dad gave me that gift of love of work, of love of hard work, and not seeing it as work, but something to do. It kept me out of trouble. Not to say I didn't get into trouble, but it kept me out of a lot more trouble. But I think that's a gift that some kids need, and this older generation would give you that gift, but you got to want it, and you got to want it bad.
You know, I've worked with people who show up and they just are there for a paycheck. But when you work with somebody who is truly passionate about what they do, it is a completely different ballgame. And it's really cool to watch, to see what people are willing to put themselves through when they're passionate about what they're doing.
Take the man down that's probably downstairs right now, Smoke, for example. I mean, that man's got more passion than anybody. I mean, what you all have built here, not only from a cattle operation, but the trucking operation and now your podcast, I mean, that's a big testament right now of passion. I always tell young people this: don't get satisfied. Stay hungry. I said, if you just sit here and you're content where you're at, you're going to stay at this level. Never be content. want more. I'm never satisfied with my auctioneer champ. I might be a world champion, but I'm still working on it. Shoot, because I have to keep it perfect at all times. No matter what I'm selling, I have to be perfect because I'm working for somebody's livelihood. And I cannot take a day off from that. That's a lot of things is some of these kids, they just get, I'm happy right here. Stay hungry.
Absolutely.
Be a bulldog in this world.
Well, and there's always room for improvement. And it's not just the financial aspect of it either. I mean, yeah, we all want to make more money and live a comfortable life. But I mean, truly building that knowledge base and being able to share it with other people is just helping other people succeed is one of the best feelings. And I'm sure you've seen it too or feel that too when you hear from a guy that he walked out of the barn with $70,000 in his pocket. I mean, that you get to watch that hard work pay off is just a very cool feeling, and you really can't beat it.
No, people, see me there like, oh, you're stressed. I'm dealing with people's livelihood. Of course I'm stressed, but there is a huge reward in walking out, even in years where it was tough, and you're selling cattle more than somebody expected in a bring. That is where I find my purpose in life. And it's one of the things that I care too much. My dad always tells me I care too much. Well, somebody's got to care. And I want everybody to walk out of my barn. Certain things happen and people get upset, but you've got to do right to make everybody happy at the end of the day. And even if I got to end up unhappy, I mean, shoot, that happens a whole lot in my business. There is some heartache in it. There's troubling times, but if I can make a farmer and rancher's life better, then my goal for that day has been achieved. If I had to take some bumps and bruises to get there, so be it. That's the job I signed up for.
This is good stuff. Is there anything that we didn't cover?
We actually got the honor this year, and it is an honor to host this contest.
Yes. Okay. I did want you to cover this because this is coming up, and I want you to give a plug for the sale barn and everything.
So June the 7th, it's going to be pretty much a week-long convention for the Livestock Marketing Association, along with the World Livestock Auctioneer Championships. So that Thursday, and I think that is 5th of June, down at the West Fairgrounds in Council Bluffs, Iowa, there will be a host barbecue. It's a big deal. Everybody comes around to it. And one of the coolest parts about it, it didn't happen when I was in the contest. I'm still I'm not bitter, but I'm like jealous that the guys get to do this because I think it's cooler than everything. The guys all have to draw for a number. You draw out of a bag, and it's your position for where you're going to be at in the interview and where you're going to be at in the auction. But when I was doing it, you drew it at the sale barn. There was no crowd. There was no atmosphere to it. It wasn't pumped up. And LMA has really stepped up to the level. It's kind of like PBR now. Guys are going to get to walk down to the stage and draw their number that night, and it's going to be cool. I'm really actually kind of jealous about this. Because I think
they need like an honorary.
Yeah,
let Will walk down.
Yeah, just let me walk down. The 5'6" short stuff. He's in. I took more short jokes in this contest in it too. Oh Lord, But it's so cool to see it with that host barbecue. And then if you get the opportunity, Friday afternoon, about 2:30 in the afternoon at the Hilton in Omaha, across from the CenturyLink Center, they're doing the interview process. Now it's open to the public. You can actually go in and watch these interviews.
Everybody that can't be nerve-wracking at all.
Oh, yeah.
Was it that way when you
interviewed?
Yeah. Oh, man.
It was open to the public, and it's live streaming, too, on YouTube under Livestock Marketing Association's YouTube channel. And you walk in, and you're asked, it's pretty much worse than anything. They seclude you. They take your phone. They take your smartwatch. If they think you've got a GPS in there, they'll cut it out. Trust me, they will search you. If they have any reminiscence that you know what the questions are, then you're going to automatically lose 10% of your score. So you don't want anybody to tell you what's going on. You just want to sit back in the room. And then you're brought on stage. The past champion, just like in 23 when I was champion, they come across. I have 3 questions. I ask those 3 questions. They answer them. There's a panel of 5 judges in front of them. That's 25% of your total score comes from the interview. So it's not just an auction. It's 20. This is make or break.
Now, what types of questions do they ask?
So some of the questions would be, if you were lucky enough to be the World Livestock Auctioneer Championship, what would be your message? Most of the time, there is something about the LMA, because in 2013, we all flopped that one. Every contestant did, and Livestock Marketing Association did not let us forget that. So they'll ask questions as, what does the LMA provide to its membership? Or what does the LMA do? And then there'll be a question there, and they're not gotcha questions. They're just questions that you would be asked. They feel like you're going to be asked during your reign. And most of them would be, if a young auctioneer came up and asked you, what advice would you give to them about entering into the auction business? Or how would you help them? So it's questions along those lines. There is going to be an LMA questions. There could be an issues questions, like what was the difference between cool and disease traceability? What's the difference between them? So those questions can come up, but most of them are pretty baseline. This could be a question that you're going to get as a world champion, because when I was world champion, who are you? Where are you from? Why'd you want to be in the contest? And who's the LMA? That was pretty much the questions that I was asked. So that's the questions they try to give you, and they want to gauge your response to how you're going to handle yourself. Then Saturday morning on the 7th is the big dance. 8 o'clock in the morning is when the sale's going to start, opening ceremonies. All the contestants are going to be introduced, and then we're going to rock and roll. You won't see me on the block that day. I'll be out back making sure them guys get a fair shake at it, because I want to keep cattle coming to them and coming to them fast, because I want to give everybody the chance that they don't have to wait. They don't have to feel like they fill in. They got cattle popping. Mm-hmm. I want them popping to them. But the 31 guys will go through and sell. They'll take their auction score, because they get a new panel of 5 judges. And those judges are barn owners, barn operators, or auctioneers themselves, or past world champions that they're selling to, and they're scattered out. You're judged on clarity of chant, bid catching ability, conduct of the sale, knowledge of the product, and would you hire this auctioneer? They're broken down into way more categories and way more, but that's pretty much the main 5 that you're judged on. And once they tabulate those scores, the top 10 will be announced. The top 10 will come back and they'll sell 10 more drafts. And then that night, about 7:30, 8 o'clock, we'll know who the world champion is, because he'll be announced down there, and he's on. Whoever it is, I've got a few guys that I think have a very good shot at winning it this year. A couple of them are Canadian. One of them's a Montana boy, young man, and I'm rooting for him. But there are some dark horses that I think have a really good chance of being in the top 10 and may have a good shake if they have a really good day, that they could be world champion. But I wish nothing but the best of luck for all 31 of those guys, because they've all worked their tail off to be the top 31 in the nation. They all deserve it. I just hope I give them the show that they deserve.
That is definitely going to be an exciting time, and we're lucky that it's here this year.
It's going to be fun. Oklahoma City gave us some big shoes to fill last year, so we're hoping to exceed those expectations there at the barn. We've been remodeling the past 2 years, because we've known that we were going to host it since the year I won in 2022, that we were going to be the host market in 25. But it also is celebrating 75 years of business down there at Dunlap, that it's been 75 years since they opened the door. And Jim Sr. and Ruth had started the barn back there in the 50s, and it's grown from that point. The old barn that used to sit on the highway is now gone. Some of the old pens are still there. We revamped those pens, and they're still there. But what it's grown into, from housing 2,000 or 3,000 head now to a capacity of 8,000 head, it is really something, because the newer barn that we're in today was built back in 1975 and is now, it needs a little love. It is getting that love this year. We've repainted a lot of walls. We have replaced ceiling. We've remodeled the office. We're starting to remodel some pens. We're redoing the block. There's a lot of things that go into it right now. And that we're 60 days away from, 60 days exactly today. Oh, God.
It's going to sneak right up.
Oh, it's already sneaking up. When we hit January, I feel like January 1st to now has been a blink. But we're very excited for this opportunity to celebrate 75 years of us being in business, and being not only for the cow-calf operation, but being a center of our community there in Dunlap and the surrounding communities, helping them out, whether it be with benefit auctions or whatever that our services are needed and that we can give back to our communities, bringing either commerce or helping out with anything that we are able to.
On that note, what is the craziest thing someone has asked you to sell?
Boy, we could get down a deep, dark rabbit hole with that one. Oh, can't even say it.
Oh, no.
We were at an auctioneering contest down in Dodge City, Kansas. This is terrible. And this African-American lady walks up to me and says, "You're an auctioneer." I said, "Yeah, I just won this contest and whatever." She calls her brother over in front of everybody in this casino and says, "Sell my brother."
Oh.
Needless to say, I didn't do it. I wasn't going to do it, but that was the weirdest moment. Needless to say, I left the casino. I went home.
Probably a good call. You might not have lived that one down.
I never saw more people stop.
Uh-huh.
Like jackpots, dealers, everybody just froze and looked. I'm like, I'm not doing this.
Nope. Not going to touch that
one.
But
probably the other weirdest thing I got to sell was an alligator. That was pretty interesting. Down there in Florida, there was this exotic sale, and I just stopped in. They were like, hey, Will, you want to sell a little bit? And I sold camels, zebras, whatever. But then they brought an alligator in. I was like, it's an alligator? They're like, yeah. I was like, how old is this thing? They're like, oh, it's probably like a year or two old. Sucker wasn't but 3 foot long, but I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool to sell an alligator. I know a buddy of mine sold a black bear cub. All them guys that get to sell the exotic sales. That is one thing I want to do in my life. I want to go to an exotic sale and sell exotics. I really do. I want to sell zebras, horns. It's fun. I would love the opportunity if the South Dakota State Game and Wildlife at Custer State Park would let me do it. I want to sell their buffalo sale.
Oh.
I want to sell the bison when they decide what they're going to sell for the year and they have their bison sale. I'd really love to sell their bison sale.
That would be cool.
I know a buddy of mine, Dan Clark. He got to do it, but he lives in South Dakota, so he's kind of got a head.
He's got a shoe in.
He's got a head start on me. But I would really love to go because my family goes up to Custer all the time, and we go through the park, and we really love that country up there. But I would really love to sell their bison sale. I just think that'd be really cool. I think somebody had me wanted. I was at a wedding or something, and somebody said sell a flip flop or something. That's been about the weirdest thing. But that other one, I don't know if I wanted to go across airways, but that is the weirdest thing I sold. I didn't sell, but I was asked to sell.
I'm like, no.
Needs to say, I disappeared out of that casino very quickly.
Yeah, I bet.
that, like I said, it could be a very dark rabbit hole.
Yeah, that gets on the internet. You're in trouble.
Oh yeah, and everybody grabbed their phone out, and I was like, deuces.
Yep,
I'm not being a part of this.
This was a setup.
Yeah, I felt like it was. I was like, I looked at the bartender, I'm like, tab. He goes, I don't know what it is. I slapped $200 down, out the door I went. Was not being a part of this. Oh, it was bad.
Oh, that's great. Do you have a favorite sale barn food?
That's a loaded question because there's some sale barn foods that are really, really good. And I mean, a good hot beef. How does that? How do you beat that? But, depending on where you are, there's a lot of good sale barn food. Down there in Texas, there was a steak and mac and cheese that it was kind of like a Mexican style steak.
Okay.
Chopped up into mac and cheese, and it was like 6 different cheeses in this. Oh, so good. I think I had 3 servings of that. But luckily for me, I get to travel around so much. But most of the sale barns have really good hot beef. That one, really good. We're lucky enough that at Dunlap we've got the owners of Dairy Sweet, who is Greg and Lori Thompson. They run the bullpen now at the sale barn. There's a lot of good cooks in this world, but that Lori Thompson is one good cook. Let me tell you something. When she took over, I was skinny. I put on 25 pounds and she took over. I'm having to watch myself because, just her food is so good. But they won the pork tenderloin.
Yeah, how many just this past year? But they've won it before, too.
Oh, yeah, I've won it 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 times before, but it's so good. But you better go hungry with that thing because that thing is huge.
I know. I hear people, even up here, what's Dunlap, an hour from Carroll, and they'll drive just to get a tenderloin.
Shoot, somebody came all the way from Florida.
No
when
way.
When they won that, they had the banner in there, and I told them, they told him after all this is over, I said, why didn't you have people sign where they were from when they come in here? Because he told me there was somebody from Florida that heard about it and drove all the way up here from Florida just to try their pork tenderloin. I was like, that's dedication that you wanted a good pork tenderloin, but it was a great honor and good for them.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky at Dunlap to have Greg and Lori be a part of it, running the cafe, because, honestly, a good cafe, a lot of people just come in there to eat, but then slip in and watch the sale. It's just one of the cool things to have is to have a good cafe.
Man, what a little gem in Dunlap, Iowa. Who knew? Who
knew the Little Dairy Suite was going to be what it is? But those two have worked very, very hard to make it into what it is today. They've put the time and effort. They've got great employees there that they've kept. I'm amazed at what Lori has done with that operation. We can't give Greg too much credit because Greg said he'll get a little big, but Lori's the head of the operation.
Can't have that.
No, we got to keep Greg a little humble.
Oh, well, Will, thank you for being here. A lot of valuable stuff.
I hope so.
I think you taught us a lot.
I hope I did. Allie, thank you for having me. I really think this podcast is a wonderful opportunity. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, is bringing the city for people that are listening from there into the rural America and seeing what it truly is. And I thank you for the opportunity to get to come in here and be with you today, and I hope maybe someday to come back in the future.
I love it. Thank you for being here. Hopefully, again, sometime soon.
Maybe we can get me and Smoke up here at the same time.
Yeah, well, Smoke's always got something to say. That could be interesting. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Rural Dispatch. I hope you found something valuable to take back to your own operation. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. You can keep up with me between episodes on socials at Barons & Co., or join our email list on our website to get new episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Wednesday. Until next time, keep those wheels turning. We'll talk soon.